My name is Ethan Cole. I am 31 years old. For 3 years, I paid my parents' mortgage. Every single month. On the first of the month, $1,500 left my bank account and went into theirs. I never missed a payment. I never complained. It was what I did. It was my contribution. I thought it was my way of showing them I loved them. Then came last Christmas. They told me it was canceled. Money is just too tight this year. Honey, my mother's voice had said over the phone, thin and full of apology. We're just staying in quietly. It's for the best. So, I spent the day alone in my small apartment, 2 states away from them. I ordered Chinese food and told myself it was fine. I told myself that the money I sent them was keeping them safe in their home. The same home I grew up in. I thought my sacrifice meant something. If this story resonates with you, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing this video. It helps me grow and bring more stories to you. That night, my cousin Brittany posted a video on Instagram. It was a short, happy clip full of noise and light. My father, Robert Cole, stood at the head of the dining table, carving a 20 lb turkey. My mother, Susan, moved around him, pouring red wine into glasses, her face bright with laughter. My sister, Sarah, was there with her husband and their kids. My grandmother, who my mom had told me was too sick to travel, was sitting in her usual chair, smiling at a joke someone had made. Everyone was there. The whole family. Everyone except me. The lie began 2 weeks before Christmas. It arrived not as a phone call or a difficult conversation, but as a casual message in the family group chat. It was from my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister. Her texts were always short, full of emojis that never quite matched the tone. The message read, "Bad news. With things being so tight, we've decided it's best to cancel the big Christmas get-together this year. We'll just do something small at home. Love you all." I stared at the text on my phone screen. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could have asked questions. I could have offered to chip in more, to pay for the food or buy the gifts for my niece and nephew. My first instinct was always to fix things, to smooth over the financial cracks that seemed to perpetually run through my family's foundation. For 3 years, that's what I had been doing. The mortgage payment wasn't just a number. It was the patch I applied every month to keep the walls from caving in on them. But I didn't offer. I didn't argue. A quiet exhaustion settled over me. I respected it. If they said money was tight, it was tight. Who was I to question it? I was the son who lived far away, the one who only saw them on holidays and the occasional long weekend. They were living it every day. So, I typed back a simple reply, "No problem. Aunt Linda, I understand. Hope everything is okay." Sarah, my sister, replied a minute later with a single sad face emoji. My mom added a chain of hearts. It felt settled. Christmas was canceled. I spent the next 2 weeks adjusting my expectations. I canceled my flight home and got a partial credit, which I figured I could use for a visit in the spring. I told my boss I could work the holiday shift, earning a little extra pay. He looked at me with pity. "You sure? Cole, don't you want to be with your family? They canceled this year." I said with a shrug, as if it were a common thing, like a canceled flight due to bad weather. Money's tight. The truth is, a part of me was almost relieved. Holidays were always stressful. I loved my family, but being with them felt like a performance. I was Ethan, the successful son from the city, the one who had a good job in logistics. I was also Ethan, the quiet one, the one who didn't have a wife or kids to fill the silence. I often felt like a satellite, orbiting their warm, bright world, but never quite breaking through the atmosphere. My sister Sarah was the real center of their universe. She had married her high school sweetheart, produced 2 perfect grandchildren, and lived just 10 minutes down the road from our parents. She was present. I was a recurring monthly payment and a voice on the phone. On Christmas Eve, I worked a 12-hour shift. The office was a ghost town. I came home to an empty apartment and the lingering smell of stale coffee. The silence was heavy. I thought about calling them, but I didn't want to bother them. I pictured my parents sitting on their old couch watching a black and white holiday movie, worried about bills. The image made my chest ache with a familiar mix of love and responsibility. On Christmas morning, I woke up late. There were no presents, no smell of breakfast cooking, just the gray winter light filtering through my blinds. I sent a text to the family group chat. "Merry Christmas. Everyone. Love you." My mom replied almost instantly, "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. We love you so much." It was enough. It had to be. I spent the day on my couch binge-watching a show I'd already seen twice. Around dinner time, I felt a sharp pang of loneliness. The smell of my neighbors cooking roast beef and potatoes wafted through the vents. It smelled like home. It smelled like everything I was missing. I pulled out my phone and ordered Chinese takeout, General Tso's chicken, an extra order of crab rangoon, and a Coke. As I waited for the delivery driver, I scrolled through my banking app. It was a habit, a nervous tick. I looked at my checking account balance. It was healthy. I had been careful with my money. I didn't take lavish vacations. I drove a sensible car. I lived in a modest apartment. All because I knew that on the first of every month that $1,500 payment had to go through. The payment for January 1st was already scheduled. Cole Mortgage. Seeing it there gave me a strange sense of comfort. It was my connection to them. It was proof that I was a good son, even from 200 miles away. I was taking care of them. I was keeping their home safe. The food arrived in a plastic bag. I ate it out of the carton, sitting on my couch with the TV on for noise. I thought, this is fine. I'm an adult, and at least I'm helping them keep their house. That lie. the one I told myself, was the one that prepared the ground for the lie they told me. I believed I was the pillar holding them up. I had no idea they saw me as the floor they could comfortably stand on and forget was even there. The loneliness of that day was a dull ache, but it was nothing compared to the sharp, blinding pain that was coming. It was nearly 10 p.m. on Christmas night when the world tilted. The leftover takeout was cold on my coffee table. The holiday movie on TV had reached its cheesy, predictable conclusion. I was scrolling through my phone, not looking for anything in particular, just trying to fill the empty hours with the meaningless light of a screen. That's when I saw it. A new post from my cousin Brittany. She was Sarah's best friend growing up. More like a second sister than a cousin. Her Instagram was always a bright, curated feed of her perfect life. I usually scrolled right past it, but this time the thumbnail caught my eye. It was my father's face mid-laugh. I tapped on it. The first photo was a group shot. The whole family crammed into my parents' living room. My father with his arm around my mother. My sister Sarah and her husband David holding their kids. 6-year-old Emma and 8-year-old Noah. My Aunt Linda and Uncle Gary. My grandmother, looking frail but happy, bundled in her favorite armchair. They were all wearing ugly Christmas sweaters. They were all smiling, their faces flushed with warmth and wine. My heart started beating a little faster. It was a dull, heavy thud against my ribs. It must be an old photo, I told myself. From last year. I swiped left. The next photo was of the dining room table. It was set for 12 people. The good china was out. The plates my mother only used for special occasions. A massive golden brown turkey sat on a platter in the center, garnished with parsley. There were bowls of mashed potatoes, gravy boats, green bean casserole, glistening cranberry sauce. It was a feast. It was the feast they had every single year. I swiped again. A picture of Emma and Noah buried in a mountain of presents under the Christmas tree. My throat felt tight. My hands started to feel cold. This wasn't from last year. The wrapping paper was new. My nephew was wearing a video game t-shirt he'd only gotten for his birthday in October. Then I saw the last slide. It was a video. I pressed play. The sound hit me first. Laughter. So much laughter. The clinking of glasses. Shouts of, "Merry Christmas." My father's booming voice rising above it all. The camera panned across the room. Shaky and amateur. But clear. Devastatingly clear. There was my father, Robert Cole, standing proudly at the head of the table. He held a large carving knife, sharpening it with theatrical flair as everyone cheered him on. He was wearing a ridiculous light-up reindeer sweater, the one I'd bought him 3 years ago. "Time to carve the beast," he announced to the room. The camera swung to my mother, Susan. She was moving through the crowd, a bottle of red wine in her hand, refilling everyone's glass. She leaned in to kiss my grandmother's cheek. "More wine?" "Mom." she asked, her voice full of cheer. My grandmother, who had been too sick to travel, nodded eagerly. The camera found my sister, Sarah. She was sitting next to her husband, laughing so hard she had tears in her eyes. She was telling a story, gesturing wildly with her hands. Her family was all there, happy and whole. I watched the 10-second clip once. Then I watched it again and again. My mind struggled to process it. It was like watching a movie of a life I was supposed to be in. But my part had been cut without anyone telling me. I looked down below the video, my eyes scanning for the caption, needing some context, some explanation that would make it all make sense. The words were written in a cheerful looping font. Family Christmas. Nothing beats tradition. The phone almost slipped from my numb fingers. I read the words again. Family only. The two words echoed in the silence of my apartment. They were a judgment. A verdict. I had paid their mortgage for 36 straight months. I had given up my own savings, my own chances to travel, my own plans for the future, all to ensure they had a roof over their heads. I had spent the day alone eating cold takeout, feeling a noble sense of sacrifice because I believed I was helping them. And they had a party. A full, traditional, joyful Christmas party. They had cooked a 20-people turkey, set the table with the good china, and invited everyone. And they had decided consciously that I was not included. I was not family. I was what? An obligation? A bank? An afterthought? The air left my lungs in a rush. I felt a cold, hollowing sensation in my stomach. Far worse than loneliness. This was a razor. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had actively removed me. They had constructed a lie. A simple, plausible lie about money being tight. And they had fed it to me. And I, the dutiful son, had swallowed it whole. I thought of my text that morning. Merry Christmas. Everyone. Love you. I thought of my mom's reply. Merry Christmas. Sweetheart. We love you so much. When did she send it? Was she in the kitchen pulling the turkey out of the oven? Was she sitting in the living room watching her grandchildren open presents? The hypocrisy was so staggering it made me dizzy. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the empty street below. The festive lights on the neighboring buildings seemed to mock me. For the first time, I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel the familiar ache of being the outsider. I felt a profound, chilling clarity. The switch hadn't just been flipped. It had been shattered. The Ethan who felt a quiet duty to his family was gone. In his place was someone who finally saw the truth in full, devastating color. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch in the dark, the blue light of my phone screen illuminating my face. I kept the Instagram post open, rewatching the video until the laughter and the clinking glasses felt like a personal insult screamed directly into my ear. Each smile, each happy moment was a testament to my exclusion. Pain is a strange thing. For years, my pain had been a dull, constant ache. The feeling of being slightly misunderstood, of being on the outside looking in. I had grown used to it. I had built my life around it. But this was different. This was a sharp, clean wound. It was the kind of wound that cauterized itself, leaving behind not a scar, but a hard, smooth, unfeeling surface where there used to be something soft. The sun rose on December 26th. The gray light filled my apartment, and I watched the dust motes dance in the air. The hurt was still there, a heavy stone in my gut. But it was accompanied by a new feeling. Nothing. A profound and total absence of obligation. The love I felt for them, the sense of duty that had driven me for so long, had been contingent on one simple unspoken belief that they loved me back. Not for my money, but for me. That video and the caption beneath it had proven that belief was a lie. They didn't see me as a son. They saw me as a utility. And you don't invite your electric company to Christmas dinner. I didn't rage. I didn't throw things. I didn't draft long, angry text messages. My reaction was as quiet as my Christmas day had been. It was a simple, logical decision that formed in my mind with absolute certainty. I picked up my phone. My thumb, steady and deliberate, moved across the screen. I opened my banking app. The interface was familiar, sterile. I navigated to the payments section, then to scheduled payments. There it was at the top of the list. Recipient: Robert and Susan Cole. Amount: $1,500. Frequency: monthly. Next payment: January 1st, 2026. I stared at the entry for a long time. 36 payments. $54,000. Money I could have used for a down payment on my own place. Money I could have invested. Money I could have spent making my own memories instead of funding theirs. I thought about the conversation 3 years ago when it all started. My dad had called me. His voice strained with a panic he was trying to hide. He'd lost some clients at his small accounting firm. My mom's hours at the library had been cut. They had missed a mortgage payment. They were in danger of losing the house. "We don't know what to do, Ethan," he had said. And for the first time in my life, my father sounded small. And I, without hesitation, had stepped in. "I'll cover it, Dad," I'd said. "Don't worry. I'll cover the mortgage until you get back on your feet." Back on your feet had turned into 3 years. They never brought it up. They never offered to pay me back. It just became another bill. Another fact of life. Ethan pays the mortgage. I tapped on the scheduled payment. The screen changed, showing the details. At the bottom, in small red letters, was the option I was looking for: cancel this recurring payment. My finger hovered over the button. There was no hesitation, no doubt, just a cold sense of purpose. I thought of my father carving that turkey. I thought of my mother pouring that wine. I thought of the words, "Family only." I pressed the button. A confirmation box popped up as if the app itself couldn't believe it. Are you sure you want to permanently cancel this scheduled payment? I pressed confirm. The screen refreshed. The scheduled payment to my parents was gone. Vanished, as if it had never existed. A wave of something washed over me. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't relief. It was the strange, unnerving calm of finality. I had just taken my hand off the scale. For 3 years, I had been artificially balancing their lives with my own money, my own sacrifice. Now, I was letting things fall where they may. I didn't tell them. I didn't text my father or call my mother. I said nothing. An action like that didn't need an announcement. It would announce itself. All I had to do was wait. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of routine. I went to work. I came home. I ate dinner. I watched TV. On the surface, nothing had changed. But inside, everything was different. I was no longer living for the first of the month. I was living for myself. New Year's Eve came and went. The family group chat was quiet. I imagined they were all together again. Ringing in the new year. I didn't check my cousin's Instagram. I didn't need any more proof. On January 1st, I woke up and checked my bank account. The $1,500 was still there. It felt like a rebellion. I waited. I knew it wouldn't take long. A missed mortgage payment sends up alarms quickly. I didn't block their numbers. I didn't hide. I just went about my life, carrying my decision in the quiet center of my being. The ball was in their court. Let them play. The text message arrived on the morning of January 3rd. It was from my dad. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, and I looked at his name on the screen with a feeling of detached curiosity. The waiting was over. The message was engineered to sound casual. A simple inquiry from a concerned father to his helpful son. Morning. Son. Strange thing. The mortgage payment didn't go through. Must be a bank issue on your end. Can you check on it? I read the text twice. A bank issue on your end. The immediate assumption of my error. The complete lack of possibility that the issue could be anything else. He wasn't asking what happened. He was telling me to fix a problem he assumed was my mistake. It was the perfect encapsulation of our entire relationship. My first instinct was to text back, to engage in the sterile, distant form of communication he had chosen. But I knew this couldn't be handled that way. A text could be misinterpreted, screenshot, or forwarded. I wanted to hear his voice. I wanted him to hear mine. I pressed the call button. He answered on the second ring. His voice a little too loud, a little too cheerful. Ethan. Hey, son? Did you see my text? I did. Dad, I said. My voice was calm. Even. I felt a strange sense of control, like I was an actor in a play and I was the only one who had read the entire script. Yeah. So the bank called your mother this morning. He began launching into his story. Said the payment was rejected. I told her it must be some computer glitch on Ethan's end. You know how these banks are. Anyway, if you could just give them a call and sort it out, we'd appreciate it. He waited for my confirmation. For my usual, "On it, Dad." Don't worry. But I didn't say that. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment. Let it get uncomfortable. I could hear his breathing on the other end of the line. "The bank's fine, Dad," I said finally. Another pause. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head as he tried to process my response. "What do you mean the bank's fine?" "I mean, there's no issue with my bank," I said, keeping my tone level. "The payment didn't go through because I canceled it." The silence that followed was different. It wasn't a pause in conversation. It was a vacuum. It was the sound of a man's entire worldview being upended in a single sentence. I heard a faint shuffling sound as if he'd had to sit down. You canceled it," he stammered, his voice losing all its forced cheerfulness. "Why would you do that? Ethan, is everything okay? Did you lose your job?" The immediate assumption was that something catastrophic must have happened to me for the money to stop. The possibility that I had made a choice, a conscious decision, simply didn't exist in his mind. This was the moment, the pivot on which everything would turn. I took a slow breath. "My job is fine, Dad. My finances are fine," I said. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest for 2 weeks. "How was Christmas?" The vacuum returned. Deeper this time. I heard him swallow hard. "Christmas? What does Christmas have to do with this?" he asked, his voice now laced with a defensive edge. "How was it?" I repeated, refusing to let him deflect. It was quiet," he said, the lie clumsy and transparent. "I told you it was just your mother and me. We didn't do anything." This was the lie he had chosen to stick with. Even now, when the stakes were so much higher, he was doubling down. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get angry. I simply became a narrator. "That's strange," I said, my voice cold and clear. "Because I saw Brittany's Instagram. I saw a video of you carving a 20-baht turkey in a room full of people. I saw Mom pouring wine for everyone. I saw Sarah and David and the kids opening presents. I even saw Grandma, who Mom told me was too sick to travel." I listed each detail like a prosecutor laying out evidence for a jury. With every fact I presented, his breathing grew heavier, more ragged. The bluster was gone, replaced by pure uncut panic. I don't. That was..." he stammered, his words tripping over each other. "That wasn't... It was a last-minute thing. Spontaneous. Brittany just showed up with her camera." "A 20-person turkey is spontaneous, Dad," I asked. The question sharp and pointed. Setting the table with the good china for 12 people is last minute. He had no answer. There was only the sound of his panicked, shallow breathing. He had been caught. Utterly. And completely caught in a lie of his own making. The man who always had an answer, who always projected an aura of control, was crumbling on the other end of the phone. I had him. I knew it. But there was no satisfaction in it. There was just a deep, hollow sadness. This was my father, and he was a coward. I didn't need to hear any more of his pathetic excuses. I had made my point. I have to go. Dad. I said, my voice flat. Ethan. Wait. He pleaded, his voice cracking. We can talk about this. Don't. Don't do this. But I had already done it. I hung up. I placed the phone back on the counter. My heart was pounding, a wild drum against my ribs. But my hands were steady. The first wave had hit, and I was still standing. I knew with absolute certainty that this was only the beginning. The real storm was yet to come. The silence after I hung up on my father was heavy, but it was a silence of my own making. It felt clean. I knew it wouldn't last. A hornet's nest had been kicked, and the hornets were my family. They had a long history of closing ranks, of creating a singular narrative to protect themselves from uncomfortable truths. I had always been on the inside of that circle. I was about to find out what it felt like on the outside. It took less than 10 minutes. My phone rang again, and this time it was my sister's name, Sarah, flashing on the screen. I let it ring 4 times, took a deep breath, and answered. I didn't even have a chance to say hello. What the hell is wrong with you? She screamed into the phone. There was no preamble, no greeting, just pure undiluted rage. Mom is hysterical. Dad can barely speak. You're going to give him a heart attack. All because of what? Because you didn't get invited to a stupid dinner. I stayed quiet, letting her words wash over me. It was a familiar tactic. She had always been the emotional flamethrower of the family. Quick to anger, loud in her judgments. When we were kids, her tantrums could suck all the oxygen out of a room. It seemed nothing had changed. Are you even listening to me? Ethan, she demanded. You're being so petty. Do you have any idea what you're doing? You're risking Mom and Dad's house, their home, all of our memories. You'd throw all of that away because you got your feelings hurt. The phrase hung in the air. Got your feelings hurt. It was so dismissive, so belittling. As if my pain was a childish scraped knee instead of a deep intentional wound. It wasn't just a dinner, Sarah, I said, my voice low and steady. It felt like I was trying to talk someone down from a ledge. Oh, here we go, she scoffed. Poor Ethan. Always the victim. You know, we were worried this would happen. This is why we didn't want you to come. We just wanted one Christmas. One single day where we didn't have to walk on eggshells around you and your moods. Her words hit me harder than the initial lie. It was a confirmation of something I had long suspected. That my quietness, my occasional melancholy, was seen not as a symptom of my isolation, but as a burden on them, my moods. I asked, a bitter laugh almost escaping my lips. Is that what you call it when I notice I'm being treated differently? See, you're doing it right now, she shot back, her voice rising in frustration. You twist everything. This is not about you. It's about Mom and Dad. They need that money. You can't just cut them off like that. It's cruel. You want to talk about cruel? I said, my own voice finally rising. The calm shell cracking. How about lying to my face for weeks? How about you all having a big family party while I was sitting alone in my apartment believing your story about being broke? How about my own mother texting me, "Merry Christmas. We love you," while she was probably standing 10 feet away from a giant feast you deliberately excluded me from? What part of that isn't cruel? Sarah. She was silent for a moment. I had backed her into a corner with facts and she hated it. When she finally spoke, her voice was clipped. You're being selfish. You have no idea what's really going on. And then she hung up on me. I stood in my kitchen, my phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. So that was their story. I was petty. I was moody. I was selfish. I was the problem. It was cleaner, easier than admitting the truth. An hour later, the phone rang again. This time, it was my aunt, Linda. Her approach was different. She was the family mediator, the one who tried to smooth things over with soft words and gentle platitudes. Ethan! Honey, she began, her voice dripping with practiced concern. I just spoke with your mother. Everyone is so upset. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Aunt Linda, I said, my patience worn thin. You all lied to me. Now, Lee is such a strong word, she cooed. It wasn't a lie. Really. It was, well, it was a last-minute decision. Things just came together spontaneously. The word was so absurd, so utterly unbelievable that I had to sit down. Spontaneous, I repeated, my voice flat. Explain to me how it works. I'm curious. Well, you know, she stammered, caught off guard by my directness. People just started showing up and one thing led to another. So, someone spontaneously showed up with a 20 lb turkey. I asked. And someone else spontaneously decided to cook it for 6 hours? Did my grandmother, who was too sick to get in a car, spontaneously teleport into the living room? Did you all spontaneously decide to coordinate wearing ugly Christmas sweaters? The other end of the line went dead quiet. The logic was cold, hard, and undeniable. Her flimsy narrative had just disintegrated against it. "You don't understand, Ethan," she finally said, her tone shifting from gentle peacemaker to wounded martyr. "We were just trying to have a nice, simple day." "You had a day," I said. "You made a choice and I've made mine. The consequences of your choice are that you have to figure out your own finances. The consequence of my choice is that I finally get to be free of being the family ATM." "You're tearing this family apart," she whispered, her voice full of venom. "No," I said, and I had never been more certain of anything in my life. "You're all just louder in your guilt than I ever was in my pain." I ended the call. My hands were shaking. Not from anger anymore, but from the sheer emotional toll of it all. They weren't sorry. They were cornered. They weren't remorseful. They were exposed. Their frantic calls weren't about reconciliation. They were damage control. They were trying to shove the truth back into the box. But it was too late. I had already seen what was inside. January bled into a cold, bleak February. After that first explosive day of phone calls, a wall of silence went up. No one called. No one texted. The family group chat was dead. It was a cold war and I was in an enemy state. I felt strangely calm. The constant low-grade anxiety that had hummed beneath the surface of my life for years was gone, replaced by a quiet certainty. I knew where I stood with them, and it was a relief. Then, one Tuesday evening in late February, my phone rang. It was my mother. I hadn't heard her voice since before Christmas, and my stomach clenched. Of all of them, she was my weakness. Her approval was the one I had always craved. Her happiness, the one I had always felt responsible for. I answered the call. "Hello? Susan." I didn't call her Mom. "Ethan." Her voice was thick with tears. It was the sound of a woman completely unraveled. For a moment, the old instinct kicked in. The urge to say, "What's wrong?" "Mom, I'll fix it." But I held my tongue. "It's me. Mom," I said gently. A sob broke from her, loud and ragged. "Oh. Ethan. It's the house." The bank sent another letter. "It's a foreclosure notice. They're going to take our house." I closed my eyes. I pictured the house. The scuffed wooden floors. The crack in the plaster above the fireplace. The pencil marks on the kitchen doorframe where my dad had tracked my and Sarah's height. 40 years of their lives were in that house. My entire childhood was in that house. "We don't know what to do," she wept, her words punctuated by gasps for air. "Your father is a wreck. He just sits in his chair and stares at the wall. He won't talk to anyone. We're going to lose everything." She paused, waiting for me to jump in to save them. But I remained silent. I was listening, not just to her words, but to what was behind them. "Please, Ethan," she begged, her voice dropping to a desperate whisper. Please. Just for a little while. Just until we can get back on our feet. I'm begging you. We made a mistake. A terrible, stupid mistake. This was it. The apology I had wondered if I would ever hear. But as she continued, I realized it wasn't an apology for the act itself. It was an apology for the consequences. It was all just a big miscommunication, she said, the words sounding rehearsed, as if she and my aunt had workshopped the script. We never meant to hurt you. We love you more than anything. We'll never ever exclude you again. We'll have Christmas in July just for you. Whatever you want. Just please don't let us lose our home. The words hung between us. Miscommunication. A word so small and sterile for a betrayal so large and personal. It was an attempt to erase the intent, to reframe a deliberate choice as a simple, careless error. I took a deep breath, the air feeling heavy in my lungs. My voice when I spoke was quieter than hers, but it carried a weight that hers did not. It wasn't a miscommunication, Mom. She stopped crying, a sniffle catching in her throat. What? A miscommunication is when I say I'll be there at 6 and you hear 7, I explained, spelling it out as simply as I could. A miscommunication is not a coordinated multi-person lie that lasts for weeks. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. You all made a choice. But we didn't mean it like that, she insisted, her voice rising again. Defensive. How did you mean it then? I asked. What was the goal? What did you think was going to happen? Did you think I would just never find out? Or did you think I would find out and just keep paying the mortgage anyway? She had no answer because the truth was they hadn't thought about me at all. I was a function, a utility. As long as the payment went through, my feelings, my presence, my existence were irrelevant. My heart ached. Not with the sharp pain of that first discovery, but with a deep, profound sadness for the relationship I was realizing we'd never had. I love you, Mom, I said. And it was true. But I can't fix this for you. So, you're just going to let us be homeless? She cried, her voice turning sharp. The victim was becoming the accuser. No, I said, my resolve hardening. You are going to have to face the consequences of your choices. All of you. I thought of all the years I had put their comfort above my own. All the lonely holidays. The forgotten birthdays. The conversations where I felt like a stranger. The pattern had to stop. If I was family, you would have wanted me there, I told her, the final words coming out with a quiet finality. You would have saved me a seat at the table. Not a lie in a text message. I could hear her weeping on the other end of the line as I said goodbye and gently hung up the phone. I sat in the darkness of my apartment for a long time after that. I felt hollowed out, drained, but I didn't feel guilty. For the first time, I hadn't taken on her pain as my own. I had let it be hers. And in that separation, in that small but monumental boundary, I felt the first stirrings of a new kind of peace. March arrived, bringing with it a thaw. But the freeze between me and my family remained solid. After my mother's desperate, tearful phone call, there was another month of silence. I assumed they were scrambling, trying to find a solution that didn't involve telling the truth or taking responsibility. I went to work, paid my own bills, and started to think about my future for the first time, without the heavy anchor of their mortgage tied around my ankle. Then one Saturday afternoon, there was a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and my blood ran cold. It was Sarah. She stood on my doorstep, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her usually perfect hair was messy, pulled back in a loose ponytail. She wore no makeup, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She had driven the 2 hours from our hometown to stand here on my welcome mat. This wasn't a phone call. This was an ambush. I opened the door. We stared at each other for a long moment. Her fiery anger from our last conversation was gone, replaced by a weary exhaustion that seemed to have settled deep in her bones. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice quiet. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She walked into my small living room and stood awkwardly in the center, hugging her arms around herself as if she were cold. I didn't offer her a seat. I just waited. "Mom and Dad are a mess," she began, avoiding my eyes. "Dad is trying to take out a second mortgage, but his credit is shot. Mom just cries all day. It's bad." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and the words felt hollow and automatic. "Are you?" she asked, finally looking at me. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Because it feels like this is exactly what you wanted." "What I wanted was to be invited to Christmas," I replied, my voice even. "Everything that has happened since is a result of you all choosing to lie about it." She sighed a long, shuddering breath and finally sank onto my couch as if her legs could no longer hold her. She buried her face in her hands for a moment before looking up at me again. The fight was gone. All that was left was a raw, desperate need to make me understand. "We have to talk about it," she said. "For real. No more excuses. You deserve to know why." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "I'm listening." "It wasn't about money," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "The whole money is tight thing was a lie. We planned Christmas weeks ahead. The whole thing." I nodded slowly, my face unmoving. "I know. So why?" She looked down at her hands, picking at a loose thread on her jeans. "It was because of you. Ethan." The confession was so blunt it took my breath away. "Every time we were all together for the holidays," she continued, her voice barely a whisper. You just seemed so sad. You were always so quiet and you'd get this look on your face. And sometimes you'd make comments. Little digs about feeling left out or how I was the favorite. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. It made everyone uncomfortable. It made Mom feel guilty. It made Dad get angry. It felt like we were all walking on eggshells, just waiting for you to get quiet and sad and ruin the mood. We wanted 1 year where it was easy, where everyone was happy. She took a shaky breath and delivered the final devastating blow. So, we all talked about it. Me, Mom, Dad, Aunt Linda, and we decided that maybe you didn't actually enjoy coming home. That maybe you were just doing it out of obligation. We decided that you would probably be happier just staying here alone, where you didn't have to pretend. The room fell silent. The sheer, staggering absurdity of her logic washed over me. The cruelty of it was so profound, so twisted. It was almost poetic. They had seen my pain. The pain they themselves were causing. And they had identified it not as a problem to be solved, but as an inconvenience to be removed. I was a splinter in the happy family picture. So, they decided to pull me out. I finally moved from the doorway and sat in the chair opposite her. I didn't feel anger. I felt a vast, empty sense of pity for them, for their stunning lack of empathy, for their emotional cowardice. I looked directly at her. So, let me see if I have this straight, I said, my voice dangerously calm. My entire life, I felt like an outsider in my own family. In recent years, I started to notice it more, and sometimes I was brave enough or stupid enough to actually mention it. And your solution, the master plan you all came up with, was to prove me right in the most brutal way imaginable. Her face crumpled. When you put it like that, how else am I supposed to put it? Sarah, I asked, leaning forward. You saw that I was hurting, and instead of asking me why, instead of trying to make me feel included, you held a meeting and voted me off the island. You cut me out because I was noticing that I was being cut out. Tears began to stream down her face. We didn't know what else to do, she whispered. You could have tried loving me, I said. The words simple and true. You could have saved me a seat. You could have asked me about my life. You could have stopped treating me like a guest in your lives and started treating me like a brother and a son. But that would have been hard. Lying was easier. She didn't have a response. She just sat there and cried. Not for my pain, but for the ruin her choices had brought upon her own life. Her confession wasn't an act of remorse. It was a last, desperate move in a game she had already lost. She had come here hoping her honesty would absolve her, that it would trigger my old instinct to fix things. But that Ethan was gone. He had died on Christmas night alone on his couch with a box of cold Chinese food while his family celebrated how much easier life was without him. Sarah's confession was the last gasp of a dying beast. When she left my apartment that day, there was nothing left to say. The truth, in all its ugly, twisted glory, was out. She had not come seeking forgiveness, but a financial reprieve. She did not get it. April arrived. And with it, the final collapse. I saw it on a real estate website. A new listing in my old hometown. The photo was unmistakable. The two-story colonial with the dark green shutters. The big oak tree in the front yard that I had fallen out of when I was 7. There was a bright red "For Sale" sign hammered into the lawn. Seeing it didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. It was just a picture of a house. The idea of home that I had carried in my head for so long had already been dismantled piece by the people who lived inside it. The wooden frame and shingles were just the last part to go. The family seemed to be imploding. My cousin Brittany, the one who had posted the infamous Instagram video, sent me a tentative private message. "Hey, I'm so sorry. I had no idea you weren't supposed to be there. Things are a mess." I didn't reply. The final call came from Aunt Linda. If Sarah was the flamethrower and my mother was the weeping victim, Linda was the self-righteous judge. She had appointed herself the spokesperson for the family's collective sense of grievance. "I hope you're happy," she said, her voice thin and sharp, bypassing hello entirely. "What can I do for you, Aunt Linda?" I asked, my tone weary. I was done with this. "I just wanted you to know that the house is being sold," she spat. 40 years of memories gone. Your mother has to pack up her entire life in boxes. Your father looks like he's aged a decade. All of this entire disaster, is because of you." I stood by my window, looking down at the traffic, feeling a strange sense of detachment. It was like watching a movie I'd already seen. I knew all the lines. "You're blaming me because Mom and Dad can't pay their mortgage?" I asked. "I'm blaming you for being selfish and cruel," she shrieked. "You have destroyed this family. You have torn us all apart, all because you couldn't get over one little party. One holiday. You've broken your mother's heart. For years, that accusation would have shattered me. You've broken your mother's heart. It had been the ultimate weapon. The phrase used to guilt me into compliance my entire life. But it had lost its power. The words were just noise now. I let her finish her tirade. I let all the poison come out. When she was finally done panting with rage on the other end of the line, I spoke. My voice was quiet, cold, and final. "You're wrong, Aunt Linda," I said. "I didn't tear this family apart. You're the one who sent the text message that started it all. You all did it when you sat around a table and planned a Christmas party you knew I wouldn't be at. You did it when you chose to lie to my face instead of having one difficult conversation. The family was broken long before I stopped the payments." I paused, letting the truth sink into the silence. The foundation was already rotten. I continued. "All I did was stop paying to keep the walls from falling down? You are a hateful, vindictive young man," she whispered. "No," I said. I'm just not a doormat anymore. You lied to me. You excluded me. And you expected me to keep paying for the privilege. That's the part you really can't stand. It's not that I got my feelings hurt. It's that you finally faced a consequence. Before she could say another word, I hung up. Then I opened my contacts, found her name, and pressed block. I did the same for Sarah. Then, after a long moment of hesitation, I did the same for my parents. It wasn't an act of anger. It was an act of peace. I was turning off the noise. The collapse was happening, but it wasn't my demolition. I was just a man who had walked out of the building before it came down on top of him. The house sold in June. My cousin Brittany told me in another message I didn't answer. My parents moved into a small rental apartment on the other side of town. My Aunt Linda apparently wasn't speaking to them anymore, blaming them for creating the mess in the first place. The tight-knit family I had once felt so excluded from had scattered like ashes in the wind. Their central hub, the house I had paid for, was gone. And without it, they seemed to have lost their reason to be together. I spent the summer in quiet solitude. I worked. I went to the gym. I started putting that extra $1,500 a month into a high-yield savings account. The number grew, steady and reassuring. It was mine. One afternoon in late August, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was just my name. Daniel, it's your father. I know you've blocked my number. I don't blame you. I'm wondering if you would be willing to meet me for a cup of coffee. There are some things I need to say. If not, I understand. I thought about it for a full day before I replied with 2 words: when and where. We met at a sterile coffee shop halfway between my city and his town. It was neutral ground. When he walked in, I was shocked. The loud, confident man who had carved the turkey with such theatrical flair was gone. The man who sat down across from me looked older, smaller, and deeply tired. The anger and panic from our phone calls were gone, replaced by a quiet, hollowed-out resignation. He stirred his coffee for a long time before speaking. I wanted to apologize, he said, his voice raspy. He didn't look at me. He just stared into his cup. No excuses. No justifications. What we did to you at Christmas was wrong. It was cruel. There is no excuse for it. He finally lifted his head and met my eyes. For the first time, I didn't see a father looking at a problem or a resource. I saw a man looking at his son. For years, he said, his voice thick with shame, I let your mother and your sister run the show. It was easier. And when the money problem started, it was easier to take your help than to fix things myself. I took you for granted. Son, I treated you like a wallet, not a person. I am so sorry for that. An apology. A real one. No strings attached. No requests for money. No blame. Just the plain, unvarnished truth. I listened. I nodded. I didn't say, "I forgive you." It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about acknowledgement. He had finally seen the truth of his own actions. That was enough. We sat in silence for a few more minutes. The gap between us was vast, filled with years of quiet neglect and one final deafening lie. It wasn't a gap that could be closed over a cup of coffee. "I'm not asking for anything," he said as we stood to leave. "I just wanted you to hear it from me." "Okay, Dad," I said. We shook hands awkwardly and walked out of the coffee shop in opposite directions. I never did return the money. I never reinstated the mortgage payment. I kept my boundaries firm and quiet. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't watching them suffer. I took no joy in their collapse. My revenge was my own peace. It was the quiet mornings in my apartment, knowing my money was my own. It was looking at my savings account and seeing a down payment for my own home taking shape. It was freedom. Freedom from their expectations. Freedom from their drama. Freedom from the exhausting lifelong job of trying to earn a seat at a table where I was never truly welcome. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to simply stop paying for your own mistreatment. You just cancel the payment, hang up the phone, and walk away. And in the silence that follows, you can finally start to hear the sound of your own life.